Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight is a very interesting conversation. We are here to talk and learn more about the Patriots Basketball Club. The Patriots Basketball Club recently represented Rwanda at the inaugural season of the Basketball Africa League, played a very good game, and we would like to learn more from them about their achievements to date, the story, their origins, where they've come from, where they're going. We'll also look at interventions in the sports industry, just understanding what more needs to be done following the very eventful week that we had in Rwanda. So joining us, we have Brian Kirungi, seated here with us, who's the president of the Patriots Basketball Club. Brian, great to have you on The Square.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Great. Also joining us, we have with us the captain of the Patriots Basketball Club, Mr. Aristide Mugabe. Aristide, an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Also joining us all the way from the U.S. who traveled to Rwanda for the BAL is Nikhil Moore, who's the Director of Sports Investments at the Emerson Collective. Nikhil, great to have you on The Square.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Looking forward to listening to your experience, as someone who traveled from the U.S. for the Basketball Africa League tournament. Joining me, as always, is a resident panelist of The Square, Charles Haba. Charles, great to have you on the show, as always.
Same here, Diana. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Unfortunately, our other resident panelist who's usually with us, Brendan Amata, couldn't join us tonight. My name is Diana Mpisi, host of The Square. And I think we will just get straight into this conversation. So the first part of this conversation, on behalf of the panel, Charles and I, as well as our viewers, is to really understand the journey that has been the Patriots Basketball Club. We know that your team represented Rwanda at this 2-week inaugural tournament that just concluded, the BAL, known as the Basketball African League. The Patriots Basketball Club won 3 in 5 games, going up to the semi-finals, and finished 4th in this 12-team continental showpiece. I was lucky to attend a couple of games, courtesy, to you, Brian, and I think it was very, very exciting. The Patriots Basketball Club really did a good job. I think it's the first time playing on, this sort of level. So my question to you, Brian, and thereafter to you, Captain, to Aristide, is if you could just tell us, what are the origins of Patriots BBC? Where did it start? How was it founded? And, leading up to how it represented Rwanda at the BAL. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Diana. I don't know how much time you have on the show. It's a very long story, but a humbling one. We started this journey in 2014 in a very small place called SOS Kagugu. Friends of ours call us a WhatsApp group that is actually here playing at the BAL stage. So we basically came together as a group of friends who played the game, in our youth, and thought we could play a part in changing the game of basketball first. And when we started, we didn't think we'd really have a youth team, or we didn't think we'd be here. We actually wanted to be, to keep ourselves fit. So we played every evening, and we ran around.
Group of friends?
As a group of friends, yes.
Is this group of friends known as the Waze? Is that the one?
Yes, we don't like to call ourselves Waze anymore because we want to keep young, but yes, that's the Waze. And we played quite a bit with the local Waze teams, and also traveled across the region to really, keep fit, but also get to engage with the people in other countries. But after one of our championships here, we were requested by, a friend who is actually head of the federation to, he actually challenged us and said, why don't you guys consider starting a youth team? Many of us had never run a youth team. We didn't know what it meant. We didn't know the financial implications of that. And the time it would really require us to, put it together. But we said, come on, we could take up the challenge. Let's just try this. And we did. It's been a very painful journey, slow, a lot of lessons, but we're lucky to report that we're 4-time champions, back to back. That was never our goal, really. Championships was not something we set out to achieve. We just wanted to get people to love the game of basketball. And that was really the ultimate goal. And by loving the game meant that we bring more people to the games at the arena or the Petit Stade at that point. We brought things that could attract people there, like music, like DJs, like barbecue, like drinks.
Making it really interesting.
Making it an event where you want to take a friend or a guest, or probably even go on a date if you're young, if you're still dating. So we wanted it to be an event. So winning now is really as a result of people loving the game, people pushing us to be better, getting a lot of support, and a lot more members who came and supported us and challenged us to actually go and see what we could do. Over the years, after winning locally, BAL, came up, and we were lucky we had been champions the year before, and we represented Rwanda, and coming fourth for us is a huge, huge achievement. We don't take it for granted, and we think we learned a lot. And I'll just let the captain take over from there, but it's a humbling story for us.
Absolutely. I like the fact that, listening to you, Brian, it started off, as an initiative between friends to keep fit, to stay fit. And, you ended up crossing borders and thereafter created this club, to give young people an opportunity to play basketball. And here we are. Coming forth in this at the BAL. Really, really interesting and inspiring story. Over to you, Aristide. A lot of people want to hear from you. I think we've been following our social media feed before this show tonight. If you could also just share with us, what has been your experience in leading the team, the Patriots Basketball Club. If you could just share with us, what has your experience been? What are some of the challenges you have faced as a captain? And then speaking on behalf of the club, what are some of, the lessons learned?
Thank you. I think most of the things Brian has said so, but as a player, as a captain, I joined in 2016. It was a young team. I was one of the experienced players in the country, maybe in the region too. So I was joining a very young team, young players. I was not that old, but I felt like I'm old and going to lead young players to understand what it takes to be a champion. Because that before the Patriot management approached me, they said to me, like, I want you to come and lead the team to win a championship. So it was a big challenge, but I wanted it because at some point I have won. Before I joined Patriot, I was 4 times champion. So it was another challenge to see if I can win it somewhere else, not in the same team. So I took it as a challenge, but also a motivation to fuel me up. And I had to work harder than everyone else in the team so that everyone can follow up on my lead. And yeah, that's how we started winning. And as you win the first, you are expected to win the second or nothing less. So we're deserving. We won 3 times back to back, and BR came up, and it was supposed to start in 2020, but because of COVID, everything was slowed down, and BR also. But we kept hoping that sometimes it will end and we go back again. Now here we are. We were blessed to go hard, to compete, and come in on a 4th place was something we were really proud of, even if we wanted to maybe to be number 1 or number 2, but we appreciate what we have, and looking forward to make another step forward.
Thank you, Aristide. Just very quickly before you go, just playing in the BAL, what are some of the lessons you've learned that you'd want to share with viewers? What are some of the lessons you've learned as a Patriots club captain, just playing at the recently concluded BAL?
I would say the first thing it was being total professional. Like it was done differently we had like everything at like we had a tight schedule during the day. It was in a bubble. We have never. Okay, we played in a bubble in a local league, but it wasn't like the one in BL. Because like what we saw on NBA TV or ESPN was the one we were going to face. 3 days of quarantine, testing every day, having a different schedule every practice. It was quite a lot, but it was also we were also excited to live that kind of life and see what other professional basketball players have to go through, and it was a good experience to every player playing in a maybe amateur league. Or I think we learned a lot. We had the opportunity to meet the players, African players from different countries, the other non-African players who have been there before, playing for professional in the different pro leagues. So we had to interact and exchange ideas and see what we're missing and what we can do best.
I really like the fact that you say, one learning experience was the level of professionalism that, a lot of our players, I think, are taking home with them. And just, Nikhil, I'd like to just hear from you briefly, just to, as a fan, as someone who has, sports industry experience, you have a background working with the NBA, you're now the Director of Sports Investments at the Emerson Collective. You traveled all the way here. Just briefly, before we get deeper into the second part of the conversation in terms of sports industry development, what was your experience like coming to Rwanda, going to the arena, watching the games? Just what has been your experience been like?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was such a good convergence of everything that I love about sport, the level of internationalism that it has. I'm a huge sports junkie, as I call it. And especially with the experience in basketball, having this chance to see the work that some of my colleagues had done in the past come to fruition, was just an opportunity that could not be missed. It's not the first time I've done that, where you travel to see these opportunities come to life. The experience was fantastic from the minute of touchdown to getting into the arena. Rwanda has done just such a great job with COVID management, as well as with testing in ways that we don't see where I live. And then watching the quality of basketball, as well as the quality of the arena, the visual, the clean lines of all of the different partnership branding pieces, it was just very pleasant to see. And then finally, there's a spirit that comes out of Rwandans in terms of supporting their team. But I was also shocked to see, groups from Angola traveling in large numbers and bringing so much energy to the arena. And then even Tunisian fans showed up, flags, waving at all stages, which portends for something even bigger going forward, because imagine this was an abbreviated competition. It just makes you want to keep coming back to continue to see the development of where it goes, how Rwanda continues to host it for the next couple of years, and then, finally, just as an excitement of a fan to be able to both travel and make the interest of the stories that you've heard about these different countries that these teams play in now come to life in an environment that, as a sports fan, I love.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nikhil. And we'll be coming back to you. Charles, I know you have a lot to say. Did you attend any of the games?
No, unfortunately I did not, because Bran did warn me before the tournament began that some of my social habits would not be very well accommodated. But that said, I was glued to my screen throughout. I did not miss any single Patriots game. I watched 2 or 3 of the other games in an atmosphere that was more conducive for me. So yes, I was part of the experience. But that said, I think I want to speak to 2 things, and largely around the history. Brian's a personal friend. A lot of, almost all of the guys who started out Patriots are brothers and friends. They did try to lure me into the Patriots movement because it's not a club per se, but on my day one of going to SOS, one of the founders' most aggressive fellows decided it was time to give me a push. I lost a few layers of my teeth and I did not go back. So that was my latest introduction to actual playing basketball from my O-levels. And I remained a very keen supporter from the sideline, dangerous substitute as we'd like to call ourselves. But I want to really speak to passion. Yeah. And I think it's very difficult to drive the growth of any sport whatsoever without passion. I play tennis on a regular basis. I am extremely passionate about cricket, but with some of these things, and I think the other day when we hosted the vice president then of the National Olympic Committee on the show here, we did see that, you know, however much funded you are, however much talented you are, in the absence of passion, you just can't go too far. And that's one of the things that you've seen with the Patriots, about bringing a new, fresh breath of life into the game. That's been, the success is heavily based on the passion of the founding members. And I really do hope that does not win. But again, to Brian and your friends, everyone who's there, the Clemars, the Jacks, the Richards, everyone on the team, I think from really the bottom of my heart, as even at my age as a veteran sports administrator, I would like to say God bless you guys. And then to the likes of Aristide, and again taking it a little bit away from basketball and saying sports development in general, the importance of professionalism and the importance of inculcating some of these very, very, what we think would be basic at an early stage is extremely important, because to me it's a little bit painful that Aristide can come on national television and say that his first experience, to openly confess that he had never come across that expectation of professionalism, yet he's probably one of Rwanda's most celebrated sports persons. Yeah. So I think it's also a wake-up call to everybody in the sports movement that we need to really up our game, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, prepare our talented athletes to be able to present themselves and play and socialize and do everything at the highest level possible. It's not the best example to give, but we've seen very embarrassing videos going around of Olympians who cannot have a press conference. Yeah, who cannot speak to the media. So I think the importance of professionalism as we nurture talent, as we harness, as we take advantage of all these investment that the government of Rwanda has put in sports infrastructure, let's remember the aspect of professionalism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brian, would you like to weigh in on that as a sports administrator?
You know, as Charles was speaking, I actually, you know, just remembered our own experience as management of Patriots. Even us as management, actually, we were called to become a little professional just at this stage of BAL. And I think we learned a lot, you know, in terms of how you run the organization, the structures you put in place to ensure that you actually, you know, prepare the team, because you need, you know, a kit manager. You need somebody who's taking care of the water, someone who takes care of the, you know, the medical side of the team. You know, things we take for granted, maybe not really for granted, but sometimes everything is actually has a cost attached to it. And some of our clubs don't necessarily have that kind of resources to ensure that all those things are in place. But there are ways of going around that, and I think Patriots has tried to do that, in the sense that when we started out, most of our players were actually required to at least be school going. So one of our values was that we must ensure that they actually go to school, and with school that means you sort of pick some of those things. Could be media training, could be the way you engage with people on the other side, the way the discipline of engaging the adversary. So we really focused on educating our players, and we didn't really pay salaries. When we were starting out, we actually said, we will pay your tuition, go to college, and when you're done, we'll actually use our networks and actually create an environment where you can actually either work for yourself or get a job. So with those, we thought we could at least build some level of professionalism. But that was taking away the fact that you need to go now into actually professionalism within the sport itself, not necessarily within your life outside the sport. So with a stage like this, a platform like this, calls for a lot of things, and we really looked at ourselves deeply and said, look, we need to change a few things. And I can report now that with the Patriots, we've been able to put in place an infrastructure where we actually have a CEO who runs the organization. We have a COO who runs all the operations. And it's no longer the president or the other member, chipping in to do all those things, because you will never do it very well, because you have your day job, you have other things that you really focus on. So within ourselves as an organization, the management of the team, we actually also learned a lot of things during the BAL period. But I wanted to just pick on what Charlie was talking about in terms of, a player like Aristide actually, coming on stage like this and saying, this was the first time they were called to really become a professional. I think that is, in itself, speaks to what BAL is. It speaks to what we're trying to achieve in Rwanda in terms of sports tourism, saying if something is really at a global stage, it calls for certain standards. Don't really step on yourselves, don't beat yourselves down and say we're not as professional as we should be. It's just that when something takes a different shape, then requires certain standards. So BAL requires certain standards, and we're trying to catch up. But I think we started very humble. We are on a journey, and we should keep, moving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nikhil and Aristide, just before we get to the next part of the conversation, do you want to talk about professionalism, level of professionalism? I'll start with you, Nikhil, as someone who has experience in sports, specifically basketball, specifically the NBA, in the US. In terms of professionalism, what should countries like Rwanda really consider to really get to the level that Brian and Charles are alluding to?
I think there's a pat on the back that already needs to happen, because there was a lot of things that were impressive from the jump already. So for me, showing up and hearing that an arena had been built, in 6 months' time, that is a commitment that's not something that you see very often, which gives you a sense that, the industry here, the country here is very, very serious about advancing and quickly. And Brian talked a little bit about things that might excite me a little bit more in terms of the pathway to that professionalism, right? So a lot of times we talk about the pathway of athletes on court, but can you imagine how exciting it must be, for the industry that is going to develop around it, the professionals that are going to develop around it, the leagues and the teams that now have a chance to say, hey, look, this is a place where professional ecosystem is being built, where talent is being built. So, in terms of getting to that professionalism, I think that BAL certainly will help propel the industry forward, because I know what it's like to, work at the NBA. I know what it is to deliver the NBA brand. And imagine now that the NBA and FIBA have teamed up, both from the on-court and the federal or the federation level, as well as the professional and the commercial level, to come and deliver this product here in a country that I think is very, very receptive to doing it, and also kind of wants to step up to the task of accelerating quickly. So it will be very detailed, painfully detailed at times. There will be some hiccups on legal side, there will be some hiccups on the business side, but in building that flexibility along with the talent that you'll develop here, I'm not even remotely concerned about Rwanda's ability to propel itself forward, and then hopefully, especially after having this first experience, to lead others in the region to be able to do the same. I think it is a huge advantage that this was done in such a tight and difficult circumstance, because I think from here on out, being able to prove that you're able to be at that level of professionalism, acknowledging that there are certainly advancements that need to be made. You then become an example, you become the go-to of where these events come, and also for your peers in these other countries that will lean on you to try and learn to be the professionals that you've demonstrated yourselves to be throughout this event. So, I mean, hats off to Rwanda and to Kigali, and especially to the Patriots for even professionally, frankly, lifting the spirit of basketball, as I understand, in this country over the past few years.
Thanks, Nikhil. Aristide, do you also want to comment on professionalism in sports, but specifically basketball?
Yeah, I think professionalism have to come with a cost. You need, it's like a win-win situation. You give a service to a club and the club give you something in return, like salary and insurance, like you get protected to do the job as required. So until our league is a professional, is a pro basketball league, we as a club, one club, we can say we are a total professional club. Why? Because you have someone who will be in the school daytime, then be in the basketball field and other part of the day. Someone will be working for an institution, then play for your club, because you can't afford, as a club, you can't afford to pay what it needed to commit 100% to only basketball and live only from basketball. But as I've been here for long, I really think we are getting somewhere in a good way, because maybe in 5 years back, basketball couldn't even pay tuition for university for some of the players. It couldn't even pay maybe $250 per month for one of the best players in the league. But now some people have families, but and then they get resources from the clubs. Sure. So it's not like all the clubs can afford that, but I think we're getting somewhere that we can even get sponsors from within the countries to sponsor the teams. That will help the teams to get to grow financially. And with BL coming up, I think it will fuel the league, because now like Patriots is known maybe all over the world. So it will be easy to knock to some doors, and then we get something from sponsors. And then also the federation, we get some connections, because I think it won't be easy to host a BL maybe for the first edition, maybe 3 times in a row. Then it leaves us empty pocket. So I think we're in a good way, and I very hope that maybe in 5 years we'll be total professional league in Rwanda.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, as Aristide, in the sense that if you want, and he's saying, if you want us to play and give you professional basketball, invest in us.
Yes.
Make us make it full-time, not part-time. Yeah. And that's the way, you see basketballers, in different parts of the world, from 8 to 8, that is their full-time occupation, playing basketball. So yeah, we really need to look at that. And that brings me to my second part. But Charles, is there something you want to say before I do?
Yeah, 2 particular things that Aristide just said that sort of tickled my mind. No, one that she said and the other one that Nikhil said. And one is in the importance of patience. Patience pays. What Aristide is basically talking is that there are no quick wins. You have to have a long-term view, and for this to come from a player, it speaks about the professionalism that Patriots has bred in him. Usually, and I like to give the example of footballers, not because I have anything against football, but I find footballers generally all over the world as spoiled kids, whether they are professionals or amateurs. So they almost feel that because it's the most popular sport in the world, therefore the world deserves, owes them a fortune. But for this to come from a captain of the Patriots, say that no, you need to have a long-term view of your game, of yourself, and of where you're going. That's extremely rewarding, and it speaks to all sports in general. But the other thing I want to say, Diana, is Nikhil did mention about how painful that patience is going to be. You know, again, to my earlier point about no quick wins, it's the first time we're hosting BAL. It's not the last time. We have 2 more opportunities. That's what's in the agreement. But the level of detail can be very painful. You know, I was seeing social media complaints that we don't have merchandised Patriots stuff on the market. But could it be that that's how the contract is structured? Could it be that probably Patriots was not yet at that level of negotiating? Is that part of the pain or the learning process that we're talking about? Could it be that, you know, you're going to find yourself broke, as Aristide was saying, because you're trying to really play a game in which you're not? Could it be that you want as a government to play in a league where you are, and that's probably infrastructure and all the other support, and then you allow others to do what they are good at in terms of promotion and media and the game being on ESPN? Is that the price that we have to pay to be on ESPN? So I think those are the pains that she mentions, but to me, I wouldn't look at them as pains per se. I would look at it as a learning curve.
Absolutely, a learning curve. Absolutely. The next part I want us to just focus on is, and you know, you mentioned it a bit, Charles, in terms of, you know, the marketing and what something like the BAL holds for Rwanda. And I'll start with you, Brian, in terms of, you know, what do you think, you know, initiatives like the BAL, what's the sort of impact you think it has in the development of Rwanda, you know, as well as the African continent in terms of the sports industry? And here I'm talking everything from sponsorships to marketing to merchandising to partnerships. What's an initiative like the BAL, what's the potential impact that it has for Rwanda and the continent?
Sure. So let's look at BAL as a product. It's basically a property that has to be sold, and somebody has to buy it, someone has to consume it. And if I talk numbers, the global sports numbers at about 2021, they're going to be about over $500 billion US dollars. For you to be able to tap into those numbers, to have a share of that as Rwanda, then you need to sell products or properties in Rwanda that are globally marketable. So meaning that to be globally marketable, that the broadcasting rights, somebody has to sit in China or the US to consume a product that's being served in Rwanda. And so when you create the professionalism, when you create the tight contracts you're talking about in terms of how you merchandise, standardize, quality and things like that, it's because you're selling to a market that's beyond Rwanda. And yes, I'll say the Patriots probably didn't have a lot of merchandise on the market. Part of the reasons was, of course, the contracting challenges, but even then, ourselves as Patriots were trying to position ourselves as a global brand. We're trying to, create a product that can actually is sellable globally, so that we can actually tap into those numbers that are global. And so, if you talk about TV rights, it has to be global. If you talk about partnerships, we don't want to only partner with local, entities. We need to see if someone actually sitting in Angola can actually be a partner of the Patriots, because they see us as a vehicle to sell the product on the continent. If you talk about things like ticketing, getting some, share or on the tickets that are sold at the arena, we need to be at a certain level. We need to be playing at bar to actually sit on the table and have a conversation about how can we share that revenue. If you talk about, getting global recognition, where you actually say, now I can actually, say I'm transcending sports. I'm no longer just basketball, but I'm going to use basketball to actually sell other things, to create things like social change, to create things like youth, awareness, to get youth engaged in things beyond, just playing the sport, things like leadership, but using sport as a platform for them to learn. You must be a recognizable brand. You must be very, very big. So people have to be able to see themselves through you, so that whatever you portray, everything you actually say, if you're a professional player like Aristide, people need to actually say, you know what? He speaks for me. So I want to do what he wants me to do, because he's a positive leader. He's a global brand. So all those things speak to the stage, and to create that kind of stage and be able to attract what is globally available, you must be, of value. So that's what the Patriots have been trying to do over the years. We're trying to portray ourselves as the best club. We try to get people to love us. We're trying to get people to, recognize us easily on social media. You've seen our social media activity is quite, hectic.
Grown.
It's growing, and the reason we do that is so that we can engage with everybody. So you only engage because you're trying to get recognition locally and also globally.
I like really how you've connected this with using the sports for social change, especially when it comes to youth. Nikhil, I'd like to hear from your perspective. Like I said earlier on, you have a big background in the sports industry. What do you think initiatives like the BAL represent for Rwanda and the continent?
I mean, it's almost like, where do you start, right? Because there's just so many things that can come from this. And yes, I'm going to get a little bit excited because you've hit on all the things that I love. You talk about merchandising, you talk about partnerships, and I think partnerships are going to be a very fun key to all of this, because that use of intellectual property is not just only incumbent on the Patriots or the individual teams to do. I'm sure the BAL is thinking about it all the time. Because if there's one thing a fan really wants to do, is they really want to rep their team's colors. They want to be able to wear, their passion and their fandom on them. There's also so many different opportunities with partners and sponsors locally, and then also just kind of a unique twist that's available here. So I think what's most exciting about the opportunities that will come from these kind of initiatives is it's not quite a blank slate, but that new focus on the industry itself will open up new and creative opportunities. I think there's an impact of storytelling that can come from this that is next level. Before I even got here, I was watching 30-minute series on the different teams and trying to understand about not only those teams, but the countries that we're coming from. And I've sit in classrooms with young students that say things like they want to change a narrative or they want to propose a new narrative. And I can only imagine what that's going to mean from a content perspective when you have such a high-profile platform as BAL, and then you have the creative and youthful storytelling that's coming behind it. In terms of the broader impact, like I said before, there's certainly, I'll leave the on-court impact and that to the professionals, as it were. But the off-court impact is also something that we need to pay attention to and definitely need to look at from a sense of, okay, how many industries and how many professions are going to develop from this? And how many more entrepreneurial opportunities will come from this? And to Brian's point, the extension of the brand beyond just the local market to international audience, I think you've set off on the right foot. I remember I was actually at home when I watched the broadcast on ESPN. And because the league is also going to be trying to grow, I do think that individual teams are going to have a really great opportunity to partner with the league to say, here's how we make the plate even bigger. Finally, I think from Rwanda's personal perspective, I've heard a lot of brilliant conversations and buzz happen around this event. So whether that's education, whether that's becoming kind of a hub of professionalism around sports, whether that's data analytics, broadcasting at a level that says, hey, not only can we do a bubble, but because we know that TV rights is the biggest thing, we can also produce an event at a high standard, as well as the production, as well as the commentary, and all of the commercial valuable tools that this hub will have. So, the impact is, I mean, on-court and off-court are probably two entire shows by themselves, frankly. But it's certainly something to be very excited about. I am certainly excited about it, and I look forward to seeing how far it goes going forward.
I'd like us to just read a couple of tweets that have come in from our viewers before we go to the last part of the conversation. And the first tweet comes in from Dolapo, and he says, interesting insights from Brian and Aristide. What are some of the challenges they face which can be ameliorated by the appropriate authorities so that basketball players and teams can cooperate professionally like they would want to? So that's the first tweet that we have. The second tweet comes in from Leonard. And Leonard says, excellent and timely conversation. Kudos to Aristide and team Patriots BBC. You have demonstrated the power of vision and big dreams. The BAL has provided you all the provided you all the platform to take the game further and to grow professionally. Great insights as well from Nikhil. Would you like to answer that question very quickly? What are some of the problems or challenges you face that you think various authorities working with them can ameliorate?
First of all, I just want to really applaud our leadership for creating platforms for us, like the arena. But I think we need more arenas, or we need more playgrounds for the youth, because if they can play at the lower level in their local neighborhoods where they're not challenged with transport and things like that, then really talent would be created. But we also need to get into areas like academies, of excellence. And I've seen conversations with the Minister of Sports where they're putting up innovations where they can actually have excellence centers. So we need to, really push that as well, so that talent can, grow, because that will also limit us in trying to attract a lot of, maybe foreign players that sometimes we could actually rely on our own talent locally if we actually nurture it and grow it. But for me, the most important thing is really around playgrounds or platforms for people to actually express themselves.
Exactly.
Because there is where they actually grow the leadership, is where they actually, create partnerships or friendships and build character. So for me, if you create, government can really focus, or rather authorities can focus on playgrounds and fields, I think that will go a long way in helping us grow the sports industry in Rwanda. And I mean, I can spend a whole day talking about other things, but I really want to just focus on just playgrounds.
At least the environment,
yes,
physically speaking.
Yes.
We also have another tweet coming in, but this person more or less is asking something that you've just answered. Talking about development policies, your plan to have an academy, and of course thanking Patriots BBC and Aristide for being part of history. You answered that question. I just want us to come to the end of our the show, so just closing remarks, so to speak. But just we have one more tweet that I'd like us to read. This tweet, if you could have it on the screens, comes from Emma, who says, "Thank you, Kirunji, Brian, and colleagues, for the magnificent job you have done for the Patriots BBC and basketball in Rwanda. The impact you have had thus far on the game of basketball in Rwanda is bigger than what you think. A lot more is going to happen." So great optimism, from our viewers and people who have just been observing the Patriots.
Yeah, Dana, I wanted to just speak into something that Nikhil mentioned around the off-game opportunities.
Of course.
Yeah, off-court opportunities that have been raised. And of course, everything is a learning curve. And it would, for me, I think we would like to see, like, the next BAL be a lot more inclusive. And of course, probably, if we had an Asha Komugisha from Rwanda, or a DJ Poison from Rwanda, or another of the teams picking a top star, maybe Aristide tomorrow becomes a great guitarist, and then he's picked by Petro de Luanda to come to go and play a guitar in Petro de Luanda, but also play basketball. So the import and the export, but most especially the opportunities for our local people, emceeing, our sports journalists, our DJs, all the refereeing, all these opportunities that are off court. I think it's a huge eye opener. Yes. But for that to happen, I want to emphasize something that Aristide said, and we sort of went away in passing: the importance of the entire entire ecosystem. Yeah. So it's not enough that today's basketball is a huge competition between Reg and Patriots. It's like 7 years ago, it was just between Espoir Basketball Club and APR. So we need to have a level where it's extremely competitive at the elite level, such that it brings the best in everybody. Because in as long as Patriots and Reg are sort of swimming in their own waters, and all the others are playing catch-up game, it's not going to lead us anywhere.
Absolutely. It needs to be a level sort of playing field.
And it can't be for everyone, I think.
Yes.
It can't be for everyone.
But the standards,
yes.
The high standards, it needs to be applied to all the teams, not just, these two teams that are locally that have been shining more than most. I want to just quickly talk about, in closing, the Patriots Basketball Club. Brian, what are the plans? What are plans for the future? Do you plan to have a women's league, women's club, and also in terms of partnerships. What are your plans to have more partnerships or sponsorships or more investments in the club to allude to what Aristide said, in order to grow the level and quality and talent that you bring into the club? And when you speak, you're not just speaking for yourself. I think you're speaking also to other, heads of clubs. I feel like you're speaking as a sports administrator, not just for the Patriots, but what are some of your plans that can echo?
I think one of our, to go straight, one of our major plans is to actually have an academy, and there must be academies for all the clubs. Number 2, have a junior league, because that's where you keep the players really engaged. Number 3, have a home of our own, because if you're talking about sustainability of the organizations, we must have grounds of our own where we can actually collect receipts, where we can hold events and revenues, where we can keep our memorabilia, where we can have halls of fame and things like that for our clubs, where our tradition and history can actually be preserved. The other is really to say, how can we now engage with our authorities? Basically sit on the table and have a PEP conversation, with the leadership in sports, and say, look, can we grow, or can we build an arena or a playground where we're actually equal partners and make it work for both of us? Can we have a sports leadership institute in Rwanda, where actually these young people coming out of sports can start building careers in sports? You're talking about off-court. Charles and Nikhil were referring to off-court professionalism, but those things have to be if you will, deliberate, where we actually grow, sports DJs, where we grow sport broadcasters, where we can get commentators, the referees are talking about, sports arena managers and things like that. Those things have to be deliberate. They will grow because of the competition, and when you bring a DJ Poison coming out of Dallas, definitely it's some DJ in Rwanda who's looking at her and saying, what did she do right? They're already picking on that, but someone else has to have a deliberate plan for them and say, this is what happens during a game, and this is how you manage the game. So we need to have a deliberate plan, but also let people who are good at this actually teach our own people. So I think there's been a good conversation with our leaders. I think the Federation of Basketball is doing a great job working with us and other clubs. The Ministry of Sports has been very close to us. We really appreciate them. At the Patriots, we are lucky that we have a membership, a group of members who are diverse in the sense that they have skills and skill sets that are beyond basketball. So we are able to tap into that, if it's communication, if it's, lawyers, if it's about managing business. So we try to tap into their expertise to actually help our club, but we need that structure. It must be in a deliberate manner, either in an institute form or someone to preserve and transfer that knowledge to our people.
Absolutely. Aristide, over to you. What are your if you could also share with us some of the plans and your expectations as a captain of the Patriots Basketball Club moving forward?
I think right now we are expected to do more than what we did this year. If we came on fourth place, we are expected to be maybe number 3, number 2, or number 1. So it's a challenge to me and to my teammates that we have to go deeper than what we did last year's. We have to start from the local league. Now, starting from this weekend, we have games of local league. In 1 or 2 months, we have national team playing Afrobasket. Also, it's another challenge to the players, as we have many of our players will be representing the country. I think we have learned a lot from BR. We have seen that our level is not good enough to compete on every day on the highest level, so we can't measure ourselves on playing REG, APR, and the other local teams. We have to go higher than that, and we keep working and work harder than we have been working. And also it comes with the discipline, it comes with the changing how we were doing things. So I think we have to be more disciplined and to have a lot to sacrifice. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Aristide. Nikhil, closing remarks. You've given some really great insights, also some great advisory on, the coming years, if we really want to grow this sport, not only in Rwanda, but across the continent. Just your closing remarks on this conversation.
Yeah, I would just say the one takeaway that I think I'm walking away with is that the product counts. So there's a piece of this that is the on-court part about building the constant competitiveness, because that's the only way you improve. And Brian made the point about even if a DJ comes from somewhere else, you know, you're almost like, well, why wasn't it necessarily me? And all DJs now need to step up their game. The same thing happens with the competition on the court. And so as many more people start to think about how do we continue to make sure that there's a competitive level at every phase, every stage, there's not a month off basically of competitiveness, the product will improve. The detail that will come from, you know, having a Basketball Africa League and market, I think will only be beneficial. And then, you know, I would also say maybe taking advantage of a starting point. Like there's a head start that Rwanda has now by doing a bubble event here. I don't know about other people. I'm assuming, you know, we have cricket fans here. So I know that others watched, you know, the IPL and their bubble, the cricket test match and their bubble. And saying to yourself, okay, what made that so super successful? Well, we know we can do a bubble. We know we can do a quality event. Is it that we now need to step up our broadcasting capabilities, our distribution capabilities? What puts us on a plane to get ahead and to be the first one that's looked at in order to do something unique, to bring a new event, to bring a new sport? And that's what everyone will be looking for as they try to expand internationally onto the continent.
Thank you very much, Nikhil. I really like your points on really amping up the ante when it comes to quality, when it comes to competitiveness, when it comes to professionalism. You know, inward as Rwandans, we need to now really look into that and, you know, just really put up our quality and levels and standards when it comes to this. Charles, very quickly, closing remarks before I go.
The sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. The government has done a tremendous job in as far as infrastructure is concerned. Easily 80–90% of the sports environment is around athlete, around the sportsman and the sportswoman himself. The DJ would never mean anything. The coach would never mean anything. The umpire would never mean anything if the athlete was not on top of his game. So the infrastructure, government has done its best in infrastructure. I did read, I think, a $4 million or 4 million euro fund by FD, the French development agency, going into nurturing sports talent. I know the Ministry of Sports with WDA had set up academies with IPRCs. I think a lot of emphasis needs to be put in developing the talent itself, nurturing it to the highest level internationally, and then the rest will just plug in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brian, very quickly, closing remarks, although you didn't answer my question on the women's Patriots BBC.
Can I just say one comment about that just before Brian comes in? I did come across a lady who played for Rwanda basketball, and she's now a model. Now, talking about off-court that Nikhil was talking about, therein is an opportunity right there. Yes. Sure. Yeah.
Very quickly over to you, Brian.
Quickly on the women, yes, it's in the works, but it definitely takes a bit of time, but we'll think about that. But if I have to give my closing remarks, I think it's just to say thank you for the opportunity to be on the show, to appreciate our fans who really worked with us throughout the journey, our members who have been with us from day one, who know the pains and grains of everything that we do. The leadership that has put the infrastructure that we are actually able to express ourselves at this stage. I think for me it's just to say thank you, and it's just a start, and it's a huge product that we're trying to put out, and we're not going to stop. My captain just said the challenge is on. Probably next year will be a little better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much, Charles. Thank you very much, Charlie. To Aristide and Nikhil, thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure having all of you on the show. Very important and timely conversation on the sports industry, sports tourism, sports landscape in Rwanda, and how we can really push forward, you know, following the just recently concluded Basketball African League. Thank you very much to our viewers. Also, thank you very much to our partners, Bourbon Coffee, as well as Made in Rwanda. I can see Nikhil wearing a House of Tayo and Otbazo. We try and keep it Made in Rwanda and local on the square. Thank you very much for everyone for tuning in. Have a good night. See you again next week.